you're not your circumstances now.
100%.
You can completely shift that right now to being like who you think you want to become or who you want to become in the future.
If I leave here and the worst thing in the world happens and I get a phone call that somebody I love passed away, it would break my heart. I accept that.
You accept it.
I cannot be attached to outcomes in life.
The thing is with outcomes is that we're not entitled to them.
100%.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like you could be the smartest fucking person and not get into Harvard.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Yeah. What is it, Merab, that makes him good?
You do not know what's happening when you fight him, when you spar him. That's
Okay.
the thing about
Yeah,
him. You
sure.
don't. He's a puzzle. You're like, am I winning right now? It'll hit you like a truck. You'll be doing good, and then 10 seconds later, you'll be dead. When it comes to me fighting, I do not want to go to a decision with anybody.
Yeah.
When it comes to fighting, I want to be, one of the most entertaining fighters of all time. I do not want to win any decisions.
Yeah.
I want to have my opponent flatlined, completely knocked out.
Yeah.
And be standing over them in every single fight.
How's that different from when you first started? Were you more conservative when it came to
I was just trying to point fight and just trying to get, just trying to get the win. Part of that was just because I looked up to a lot of fighters who were like that, just kind of staying on the outside, just touching, not getting hit.
Yep.
But now my mentality has completely changed.
So recently, man, you were sparring with Merab and then it went like pretty viral. I saw it on like Freak MMA and all the like MMA channels, bro. And I thought it was the fucking coolest thing because I was watching it. I was like, that's my dog. I just rolled with him like probably an hour ago when I saw that. Yeah. And the thing is, I want to ask you, man, particularly sparring with the champ when we have the luxury of him being around the gym. What was the motive to that? With the hair and everything. And those were some sick pictures. If you guys haven't seen it, go on Nasir's Instagram, which I'll post on the descriptions. And also, he has his own channel. But was that planned out? Like there was a sick photo with the hair, going on as you could see on the camera. Was that planned out for you to emulate the Sean O'Malley fight? Was that a planned out thing, or was it just kind of like, well, I'm just gonna dye my hair, and then we just went into it?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the podcast.
Absolutely.
I wanted to say shout out to Merab for beating my ass. Shout out to Brett Okamoto who was there.
Yeah. Brett Okamoto, man,
cool
big
dude.
fan. Yeah.
I wanted to say that was not planned out, actually. So it's actually hilarious. I've been watching Sean O'Malley for a long time.
Yeah.
And one thing that I've been trying to do more recently is emulate different fighters.
Yep.
So guys like Sean O'Malley, Ilya Taporia, a couple other guys, I've been trying to emulate their style and just kind of see how they think when they're fighting, so I can kind of get used to that.
Yep.
So I've always kind of like been kind of into Sean O'Malley's style, just kind of be light on my feet, a lot of feints, you know what I mean, a lot of like faking, spinning stuff. But everything just came together. You know what I mean? It was just perfect timing. Merab needed me to spar him, and I had sparred Merab a couple of times before that, emulating his style. Yeah. But I think him and the coaches saw that, realistically, in terms of the way Sean O'Malley moves, I'm probably the closest person at the gym to that.
Interesting.
I'm not like Sean O'Malley's height or anything.
Sure.
I'm shorter than him, but in terms of how he moves and his speed and everything, I probably can give the best look and feel for that. So they asked me a couple times to spar with him, but in terms of the hair dye and everything, it just happened like that because I dyed my hair. I keep dyeing my hair different colors. I dyed my hair like this because I did a jiu-jitsu competition the other weekend, and I just wanted to just switch it up for the competition.
Right.
And then I don't know. Before that I had already been emulating Sean O'Malley's style. The way I look at it, it was just perfect timing.
And that makes perfect sense. Would you say Sean O'Malley fits your style the best? Is that like pretty much who you like to watch? As far as like you're a fan favorite, or what is it about?
Yeah, so no, I used to be more of a fan of him back in the day. Once he fought Merab, I wasn't really a fan anymore. I've watched a lot of his fights. You know what I mean? People like him and Israel Adesanya taught me a lot about feinting, a lot about movement, a lot about being that kind of hit and not get hit type of fighter. But personally, that's not really the type of fight I like to bring. That's not the best. That's not the style I'm best at. It's just like a style I've been kind of practicing for a little bit. So I would say that for me personally, in terms of my fight career, that style is not something that I will be like using as my main style. But as a fighter, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to fight like any fighter in the world.
Yep.
So when I fight, people aren't going to know who they're preparing for.
Right.
People who see this, my next opponent, they're gonna think, okay, is he gonna fight like that, or is he gonna fight completely different? If you go back and you watch my last fight, I did not fight like that at all.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Every single fight I have, I fight completely different. My opponents have no idea what's coming next. You know what I mean?
What's going on, guys? Just a quick announcement. If you're watching and listening on YouTube, if I can ask you, please hit the like and subscribe button. And also, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, if you can leave a quick review and hit the follow button, it really helps out to reach to more audiences. And as always, thank you for your love and support. And now back to the show. You know what's interesting about you, what I noticed, and this is just based on rolling, not like sparring or anything, but then you're more loose and free from the last times. Like that's what I want to talk to you about, because our last podcast, you pretty much did like you explained how striking works very, very well. Like I clipped it up on Instagram. I was like, oh, that's really good. But what I noticed is that just in your movement and grappling and striking, it's really changed. It's almost like you're now really expressing yourself, right? You're more loose, you're more confident. Can you talk about a little bit about the development of when I knew you first?
Yeah.
Right. And then how you've grown ever since. And I've known you since what, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, ever since we started going to Syndicate.
Yeah.
Tell me what changes you've made, not just in your fighting style, but like mentally, how do you approach the game now compared to how you did 6 years ago when you just first started the scene?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what I would say is, I've gotten a little bit more into spirituality and like things like non-duality and consciousness. And one reason for that is because my whole life I've struggled with a thing called OCD, pure OCD. It's a thing that attacks, your thoughts, things in your mind. It can kind of make your mind a little bit like a prison. So what helped me with that was spirituality.
Yep.
And when I did that, when I got into that, I translated it to fighting as well. So the idea that like you're not your thoughts, you're the observer of the thoughts, that kind of thing.
Watching the watcher.
Being the watcher. That kind of thing really opened my mind up, and it kind of freed everything when it came to fighting. I feel like in the past, in my training and fighting, I overthought things. I kind of was my own worst enemy. So when it came to kind of just learning more about the other side of life, which is, kind of the more free flowing, not the side of life where you're not trapping yourself in your own mind. That allowed me to become a much better fighter, and for me to be a lot more free, and for me to be like, just compared to the last time we talked, like I was a complete baby. That's how I feel.
Sure,
myself.
absolutely.
I see it like it's been pretty much a year, and I feel like in this year, like I've grown up a lot.
It's crazy.
The fighter I was, like, it's not even comparable to the fighter I was a year ago. You know what I mean?
So can you talk more a little bit about that? How did you implement like you battling yourself? What was the process that you went through with that to be able to implement that in fighting? Like what correlates the two? Like what connects the two?
So, like I said, my whole life I've struggled with a thing called pure OCD, which is a thing, it's a mental disorder where it'll give you like a lot of intrusive thoughts, a lot of like self-harm thoughts. I've struggled with a lot of, self-harm things in the past. And, to help me with that, I was recommended to start looking into spirituality and things like I said, understanding who you are as like consciousness and like a soul, and not your mind. You're not your mind. You're not the bad thoughts. If you think a bad thought, that's not who you are. That's just a bad thought. Things like that. That really helped me out. And then so when I realized that, I was like, wait a minute. If I'm in a fight and I'm overthinking and I'm letting those thoughts get to me, I'm not as good of a fighter. So when I realized that, I was like, okay, well, when I'm training, I'm going to make sure that I'm in complete control of what's going on in my mental space when I'm fighting.
Yeah. And how do you do that?
So if I'm in a fight and I get tired and I have a thought that says, oh, you got to do this because you're tired, you got to do that because you're tired, and I normally wouldn't do that, and I'm like doing that because I'm lazy, I recognize who I am, and who I am is not that little bitch who I am is not the little bitch that's gonna like give up.
Yeah.
That's just a thought.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Who I am is the dude who's not gonna stop, and the dude who's gonna push forward and fight through anything. So that's kind of the biggest thing that helped me. And then once I started to do that, I just found different ways to just think differently, to just be more free, be more loose, not put too much pressure on myself.
So would you say that kind of mental state goes into the physical. So if you're like really tired and then you switch up that mental state, like so technically what you're trying to say is that you're not identifying with the person. Say, for example, when you're sparring, it's like, oh, I'm getting tired. Wait a minute, I'm not that guy. Right? It's more of like an identity.
Yeah.
It's more like, wait, what do you mean? We're only like 5 rounds deep, 5 minutes in or something like that, right? Yeah. I think that's a very interesting thought, and I think it's very, very helpful for fighters all around. Because
100%.
when you see like a beginner fighter, even intermediate fighters, they're all stiff and shit, and you know that they're into their heads. They're overthinking so much, right? It's almost like I was reading this book, like Daniel Kahneman and Think Fast, Think Slow, and then you just have to, like, it's pretty much we practice to get things second nature to us, right? But then there's an added to that, which you just reiterated in the beginning, which is like spirituality and like really like shifting your identity into like what we talked about before this podcast is that you're not your circumstances now.
100%.
You can completely shift that right now to being like who you think you want to become or who you want to become in the future, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So, dude, that's a really great point. So going back to the whole Merab thing, since, you know, it did get a lot of like views and stuff like that, what is it that you learned from just sparring with him? Not in just that video, but probably your overall take on just being around him and sparring him.
So I learned how to pace myself. He's really good at chain wrestling. And if you try to force too much, like if you try to force your way out of a chain wrestling like situation with him, you're going to get really tired. So I learned how to pace myself. You know, there's plenty of like, if I give all my energy to defend his takedown, then maybe I can defend the first or second takedown. And then when he goes the third and the fourth and the fifth, then it's like, wow, I have no energy. So I learned not to force anything. That's what he does. You know, that's what Merab is really good at. That's what he's told me, is that he doesn't force anything.
Can you go more into that? This is like a wealth of knowledge that I'm pretty sure fighters like when they're in there, because like we were talking about, we're chaining knowledge together, right? Pretty much. It's almost like this from the spirituality thing that makes you a free flowing fighter to just don't force anything. Can you talk more about that? Because I obviously that's more physical than it is mental.
Well, in my opinion, it's mental for me when I'm sparring Merab.
Yeah, sure.
Because the thing is like, it's actually crazy. Like if you know, anybody who's kind of been aware of the thing I'm talking about, you know that like if you're tired and then you tell yourself, oh, I'm tired, I'm gonna go slow down, do this, do that, you know, then it's just like it's like a snowball effect. You keep going downhill. But if you're tired and you're like, no, what? Fuck this. I don't care how tired I am. You know what I mean? I'm going to keep pushing through. You see a difference. So I would say I've learned to accept in life.
Okay. Yeah.
So not just in fighting.
Sure.
So if I die tomorrow, I accept that. You know what I mean?
Dude, I love that. Dude,
if I
love this shit.
If I leave here and the worst thing in the world happens and I get a phone call that somebody I love passed away, it would break my heart, but I accept that.
Accept it,
I cannot be attached to outcomes in life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Brother.
I cannot.
That's heat.
Yeah.
Yep.
I cannot be attached to outcomes in life. I cannot be like, man, if I'm not UFC champion in the next 10 years, I failed in life. That's not how I look at it. Yep. And that's the same thing with fighting. If I defend a takedown and Merab takes me down, I don't look at it as like I failed. I'm like, I just got taken down. And now I'm going to figure out how I can get up. And if I get held down, well, I did fail if my goal was to get up, but like, I'm not going to let that get to me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, that's what happened, you know, that's what happens to every person Merab fights. You see it. They do well in the beginning.
Sure.
They, you know, maybe they clip them, maybe they do this, they do that.
It's like, I got
And then
him.
it's like, I got him.
Yeah.
And then it's like, wait a minute. I thought I was doing well. And then it's a snowball
There's fucking
effect.
4 minutes, 30 seconds to go. What the hell?
It's a snowball effect.
Yeah. You know what, man? Fuck. That's so powerful about, you know, the accepting thing, because it's a lot of what, you know, I've been thinking about, right? Because of, especially with recent circumstances with, you know, like you said, with maybe a family member, you know, had something tragic happening to them or anything like that, or a health crisis that you or anyone goes through, me in particular too.
100%.
That's not up to you.
Yeah.
Right? You have to trust in your faith. And I've gotten more spiritual as well over the past year. And it's really helped out with all endeavors of my life, with the podcasting, with the even fighting. It's more, I would say, intentional. Why? Because if you accept it and leave it to someone else's hand, whoever you believe in, you don't have nothing to hang your head on, and you could just focus on what you do without
100%.
worrying about outcomes, right? I fucking love that, man, because the thing is with outcomes is that we're not entitled to them.
100%.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Like you could be the smartest fucking person and not get into Harvard.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Yeah.
100%. You know, and shout out to you on, you know what I mean? I know you've battled health issues and you've still been showing up to the gym every single day.
It's keeping me alive.
Yeah, 100%.
Honestly.
And then what the thing, you know, what's really helped me with acceptance is accepting my full 100% belief is that this is not the only life. Once we pass away, there's a whole nother world.
Yep.
There's a whole nother side of this. There is no possible way that there's just a black screen when we die.
I mean,
that is not what happens.
I've seen stuff on YouTube where it's like, you know, those near death experiences. I believe it. It's almost you've seen like almost the light at the other end of the tunnel, and then you're just a form. You're just like, you know what I mean? What's it called? The simulation of what you see in life.
Yeah.
Like that's pretty much what you see. When we're talking right now, you see it way differently than I do. Right? Which is
100%.
crazy. Like whatever I'm saying to you, you filter it different. Whatever you're saying to me, I'm filtering it different because based on my experiences.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is like a gnarly thing to think about. Yeah. So, you know, when it comes to, again, you know, with fighting with Merab, because I'm pretty sure that, again, a lot of people, especially beginners and up and coming fighters, I mean, they see that video and I think they know that they can learn a lot from it.
Yeah.
It's almost like, damn, dude, like, who is that fucking guy? You know, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
If I didn't know you, I'd be like, who the fuck is that?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
It's one of the coolest things, man.
Champ.
And I just have to say that I'm really lucky. I'm really lucky that Merab wanted to spar me, saw, you know, the look that I could give him. Obviously, you know, I find it so fucking funny. The people in the comments are hilarious.
Yeah. The
you
comment
guys
section
have no idea how good Merab is. Some people were saying that like I was winning. I was like, bro, Merab was going easy on me. That was the beginning. That was the beginning of the round.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I definitely think that I can, you know, give Merab, you know, different looks and different problems that he's going to see in the fight. But like, man, the Sean O'Malley fans are really casual. And Sean O'Malley fans, I love you guys. Yeah. You guys are hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't, you know.
They're about that like the branding part of it, right? It's almost like they like the look. They like, I mean, that's why in the UFC, it's Colby Covington wrestling syndrome, right? WWE wrestling syndrome.
Yeah.
He was about to get cut from the UFC, but hadn't he not done that? Of course, he went on like this crazy fight winning streak. But then had he not done that, he was cut completely.
Yeah.
If he hasn't talked all that shit.
I know, 100%.
And what I noticed with you, and I fucking... Since we're in like the creative space now, you know what I mean? We're both doing content and stuff like that. It's interesting because it's almost something that you have to do.
Yeah.
Because just like the casual Sean O'Malley fans out there, they don't understand the workings of a business. You know what I mean? It's almost like, wait, why is he doing that? It's like, well, it's marketing, motherfucker. 100%. If you're not like say YouTube, if you're not 80% of what people don't understand, oh, that's such a clickbaity title. If you don't package it right, how can you get the people to watch your content to get value out of it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what gets clicks. But then you have to deliver on that promise.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah, man. Like I just thought that was interesting. I thought it was just like a big topic to talk about. Like from that sparring session, and I know I've asked this in a different way earlier. What is it, Merab, that makes him good? I know that, you know, like with the wrestling, he never gets tired. That's what gets talked about the most.
Yeah.
But is there more to that other than just that? What's the one skill set that people don't realize that he has other than unbreakable, unstoppable cardio?
Yeah. Well, it's how,
wrestling.
It's how smart of a fighter Merab is. It's his fight IQ.
Yeah.
That's his number one attribute.
Yeah. Can you go into that more?
Yeah.
Because that's like a big one, especially for casuals that think it's just all about the knockouts and they don't know what's going on with wall work or cage work and stuff like that. Yeah.
So it's so funny. It's like Merab has everybody confused. Everybody thinks of him as like this just hard-headed dude who just will like just, you know, not stop, which he is that. But what he also is one of the smartest fighters in the UFC.
Yeah.
There's a reason he doesn't get tired. He does have insane cardio and he is obviously built different than other people. Yeah. But he also fights in a way that allows him to do that. You do not know what's happening when you fight him, when you spar him. That's the thing about him. You don't, he's a puzzle. You're like, am I winning right now?
Right.
Or is he beating my ass? Or am I going to get tired in 10 seconds? It'll hit you like a truck. You'll be doing good, and then 10 seconds later, you'll be dead. And then he'll be on top of you, just pounding you. You know what I mean? He has everybody confused. If you go back and you watch the first Sean O'Malley fight, guys, why well, why was Merab backing up for the first round? Merab was just circling, backing up.
Yeah.
Usually it's the shorter wrestler dude who's going forward. Why was Merab doing that? He has everybody confused.
Yeah.
It's a puzzle.
Interesting.
Some people are straightforward. Like there's like another Georgian fighter, Ilya Taporia.
Yeah.
What you see is what you get. You get knocked the fuck out.
Yeah.
He comes forward and he has power and he has nasty combo and he has nasty boxing.
Yeah.
And he's a really good grappler. That's straightforward. You know what I mean? There's a type of fighter where they're so good at their A game and it's so obvious that it doesn't matter if you know what they're going to do. You can't stop it. That's the same thing with Merab. But at the same time, you can see it in the look on people's faces when they fight him.
Yeah.
You seen Henry Cejudo?
You see him break. Yeah.
Like he picked Henry Cejudo up and walked him to the other side of the cage.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And he's an Olympic wrestler. And that's not to take anything away from him. I know circumstances, in a fight change and stuff like that. But I mean, it was right in front of like everyone.
Yeah.
And like, it's not, I was like, damn, dude.
Yeah.
And
I do want to say, go ahead. Guys, go ahead. I do emulate Sean O'Malley, but Merab does not kiss my neck when we spar. I just want to say.
Behind the scenes even too?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to get that out there.
I just had to say
we're on camera, you know what I mean?
You know what I mean? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, but yeah, that was like my point. And you know what's crazy is that like we were talking about in the comment section is people will say, oh yeah, like the last fight with Umar, right? They're saying that, oh yeah, Merab won because he was like showboating to the judges and stuff like that. It's like, okay, like
no, he was showboating because he was beating.
Because he knew, he knew.
That was my favorite one. I love seeing Umar get beat the fuck up.
Yeah, how come?
I don't know. They're kind of suck ups to a dude named Ramzan Kadyrov, who's a pretty terrible dude. So I don't really like him.
Really interesting. What's this? Can you tell me like a long story, a short story, or long story short version of that?
Yeah, so there's a dude named Ramzan Kadyrov who's the head of Chechnya. I'm not really too big of a fan of him. I've been hearing stories about him for a while. He's got a lot of fucked up things, in Africa, a lot of fucked up things in Ukraine, all of Russia, all over the place. And they take money from him and they're suck ups to him. So I'm not a big fan of him.
Interesting. Yeah. That's kind of a big one when it comes to, I mean, I don't know too much about it, so it's hard for me to say. It's just, you hear, like, say, even Khamzat Chimaev, right? Yeah. It's kind of like the involvement, and then even with Conor McGregor, with the mob and stuff like
Khamzat
that.
is actually, I feel for Khamzat because I don't think that's, I think it's a little bit different for Chechen fighters. When it comes to the support.
Okay.
But Yeah, Conor McGregor called him out for the same thing. He was calling Khabib out for the same thing about their family being friends with Ramzan Kadyrov. Conor McGregor said the same thing.
I mean, though, man. It's like at this point you have to watch someone's like credibility, though, right? At that point in Conor McGregor's career, it's kind of exactly the showmanship. Let's get more views, and I think what happened with that Khabib fight. I think it really was that. It's all about business. But then Conor McGregor, I think he just has to, at that point of his career, he just had to one-up every one of his things. Where it got a little bit ridiculous. Like the old school Conor McGregor was smart, witty. He was funny. Like, subtly, not even intentionally. He would just spoke out of it. But now, as
he's coked up.
Now he's coked up. Like he had to up the levels in the shit talking game, which came off so unnatural. Now you're just talking shit. Like, with that Khabib thing, I just didn't find that to be like the best way to even promote the fight, even though it probably did. What I mean?
He talked to Conor McGregor said a lot of terrible things. He talked about their religion, Muslims, a lot of things.
That's what I mean.
He had he had everybody just like, what are you talking about, man? This is way too far.
Exactly. And that's the same thing with like Colby Covington. It's like you're talking about people's wives and stuff like that. I think and kids. I think just some things are just off limit. Even Dana White says so, right? It was like, I didn't like that. It's just like, that's just brutal. I mean, but if it's about the bottom line, I guess, what I mean? That's what I was talking to actually on that screen, Vinny Magdalas. We were talking about like, what's interesting is that I had no idea about like, Vinny. I knew about his career. It's just his thought process on things. And one of the things that struck out to me, what he said was that, like when I think particularly was Gordon Ryan that we were talking about, because he was the last guy to actually beat him. And that one I didn't know. And Gordon Ryan was like 22 and he wasn't juiced up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And all that
yeah.
stuff. But he was saying that, yeah, people have to do it for their brands.
Yeah.
And I pointed it out too. I was like, well, you know, people got to make money somehow,
Yeah,
you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you want to make like real, like millions of dollars. But,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know, man. It's just, there's just some values that even with this podcast that I won't let go that far.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
even when I talk to people in this podcast, I tell them all the time, like, it's going to be a natural conversation and I'm not doing it for the views. I'm not going to say something to you. You'll be like, you know what
Yeah,
I mean? And then it's
100%.
like newsflash, like,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, let's get some views here.
Yeah.
It's just like real talk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
I know, it's just natural, man.
Yeah.
That's the best content when you know that's
Yeah.
when everything flows out, when you just, you know, you just let things come as they come, you know.
Yeah, exactly, man. Kind of like you're fighting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
100%. Yeah.
yeah. So going back to it, just like you gave me that masterclass in striking, you know, the last time that we spoke, and you were already a great striker by then. Now, can you talk to me about the process now that you have when it comes to, like, you know, your striking? I know it's been, I mean, just within a year, right? Like you told me this before we were recording, like the quality got better and stuff. And I really do appreciate the kind feedback. But now let's talk about like the way you fight. You know, can you talk to me about like the process of it? How you see things now when you're like standing up with someone compared to what it was back then?
When it comes to me fighting, I do not want to go to a decision with anybody.
Yep.
When it comes to fighting, I want to be, you know, one of the most entertaining fighters of all time. I do not want to win any decisions.
Yep.
I want to have my opponent flatlined, completely knocked out,
Yeah.
and be standing over them in every single fight.
How's that different from when you first started? Were you more conservative when it came to like,
I was just trying to point fight and just trying to get, you know, just trying to get the win. Part of that was just because I looked up to a lot of fighters who were like that, just kind of staying on the outside, you know, just touching, not getting hit.
Yep.
But now my mentality is completely changed. When somebody's in there with me, they are fighting for their life. It is not a game when you fight me.
Right.
It's not something fun. Nobody's gonna sign a contract with me and go, oh yeah, I'm not gonna prepare like I'm fighting for my life.
it's like, shit, all right, let's just sign this guy. 'cause,
Everybody
you know,
knows
right?
that
Yeah.
when they fight me, they're going to be fighting. Like, I'm going to be looking to kill them in the
Yeah.
cage. And there's a lot of fighters like that. But then my next fight, people are really going to see is going to be the most malicious intent. in
Yeah,
there.
right. So what's the kind of general approach to that? Are you going to come forward? Like, what is like kind of like the overall game plan?
I'll do whatever's necessary to get the knockout. I don't like backing up, but I do take pride in my fight IQ.
Yeah.
So, you know, based on the opponent I have in front of me, I'll do whatever I need to do to make them unconscious. And if that's, you know, baiting them into something, if that's backing up, if that's doing this, if that's, you know, submitting them, if that's whatever, my goal is to make sure my opponent's, you know, not moving.
Right. Yeah. So that's the goal at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Just to like pretty much pick them apart and knock them out.
Yeah.
And that's very interesting. So, you know, the first time this is actually the first time that I heard that, you know, you have the OCD problem. Now, I've talked to people with like serious ADHD, because I know I mentioned this on the last podcast, but then I think nowadays in social media, people kind of want to just say they have ADHD so that they don't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like an excuse. And that's not to say, I always like to tread lightly on these topics because someone can have a serious problem.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays when people are easily distracted because of social media, they kind of turn to ADHD to not be able to like want to face the problem and fix it, right?
Yeah.
So what is it about, you know, the OCD that you have that like kind of crippled you before you found like spirituality?
Yeah, man. So, you know, people's minds can be an absolute prison.
Yeah.
Before
Absolutely,
you
man.
know how to free yourself.
Mm.
And that's kind of what I dealt with. I had a thing that was called harm OCD.
Yep.
Basically, you have intrusive thoughts about, you know, harming yourself. You know, just terrible thoughts, making you just think, you know, some of the worst things.
Where'd that come from, man?
I you know, I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
I really can, you know, people have different theories, like traumatic things that happened in your life or anything. I can't say there's one event in my life that was
Sure.
like so traumatic
Yeah,
that I
right.
like suffered. Yeah, that I got that from like an event or something. But I would just say not knowing how to separate the bad thoughts from who I am allowed me to kind of go into a negative, down spiral. And I had some pretty terrible moments in my life, especially when it came to things like self-harm and stuff.
Yeah.
And that was very tough for me, but I was able to break free of that, and realize that who I am is somebody who's loving and wants to live a life full of happiness and peace and have fun and fight and bring joy to the world. So once I was I did talk to a therapist, and that therapist was able to guide me in the more spiritual direction.
Interesting. Yep.
So I thank God for her.
Was this as a recent, with talking to a therapist, was this like a while?
No,
back?
so this is a couple years ago.
Okay.
About 2022.
Okay.
But I didn't really go fully into the spirituality thing until 2024. So I kind of just, I didn't really believe in it too much. So I kind of,
hey man, I mean, I was in the same boat too. Yeah, for sure.
so I was like, oh, what is this bullshit?
Yeah,
You know what
right,
I mean?
right.
But divine time is everything. You know what I mean? That, suffering from that disorder taught me a lot of things. Taught me how to have full control over my mental space, no matter what's happening in my life. You know what I mean? Like you said, I'm not my circumstances.
Right, exactly.
I'm the thing experiencing the circumstances, but that doesn't define who I am and how I experience it.
Yeah, exactly. I always like to talk about, I keep saying this, but then that's one thing that really has helped me out actually, growing up and being able to just over time make quality products, not just with the podcast, but then just with training too. My training's more intentional.
Yeah.
Because you find whatever you believe in, call it the divine, call it the universe. I know nowadays God's a dirty word because of politics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, call it what you want. I don't care.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the best way to look at it. Well, I think whatever you need to call it to recognize that it's not. It's life, and it's something other than you that you can't comprehend. I'm not the type of person to sit here and say that God's a man up in heaven judging people
with a beard and
I'm not
right.
that type of person, but I think it's pretty undeniable that there is a greater source to everything and a greater creator to everything, whatever that is. I think that's pretty undeniable.
Yeah, I think there's just some things that are unexplained. And you know what's fun? It's not funny, but then what's crazy is that I used to think that everything was just logical, right? Because we try to base everything on logic.
Yeah.
Some things that you just can't explain with logic, And I used to think like my friend, so for example, I have my best friend, he's Christian. And then there was a transition where he started getting into religion. And then I was like, why? You know what I mean? And I have friends like that right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's almost like, well, it's just some things that you can't explain, right? And it's hard to say that because now you look like the crazy person, but then you just have to believe in the unexplainable.
Yeah.
Like what we were talking about, when you accept and then when you have faith in something, you could just let things go and let things play out.
100%.
Look, if I were, knock on wood, but if something happens to me or to you or, to anyone, that's not up to you, man.
100%.
Right?
1000%.
That's not up to you. And then I'll say it again is that, but then there's solace in that because if you just let it go, if you surrender yourself,
100%.
and then you could just focus on the things to optimize your real life that's actually happening
100%.
Instead of worrying. Look, and I've said this with, on the Shane, when I had Shane on with everyone, that worry is like jealousy and envy. It doesn't do shit.
Yeah.
Why am I going to worry about the future? Like it doesn't make any sense.
100%.
But then I get how the brain works.
Yeah, 100%.
Your fight or flight.
I think that's so beautiful. Obviously we have to have things like fear because we don't want to fucking jump off a cliff and then we die for no reason. But 100%, like I think also a thing that OCD attacks too is worry about the future.
Yeah.
I've had several moments in my life, and which is why you inspire me so much. I've had several moments in my life where I would worry about things that I had no like proof or control over that would happen. So I would worry about things like getting cancer. I would worry about things like dying in a car crash when I had no reason to think that would happen. And it would be like a mental prison in my mind. And I would it's like, there's no reason for me to be thinking this much about this thing. But it would be attacking my mind. And if I can't control that, well, then now I'm living day to day being worried about something in the future when I could be present and enjoying the present moment.
Man, that's beautifully said. And the thing is that when you stress and stuff like that, it's actually a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
If it's always in your mind,
manifestation,
if it's always in your thoughts, what do you think's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Like that's literally you are your thoughts.
Yeah,
you're literally that Henry Ford quote. He says that if you think you can or you can't, you're right. Like that's like seriously. If you think you can, for sure. If you think you can't, like if you don't believe in yourself, well, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just like that's why it intrigues me so much that when you're fighting, right?
Yeah.
You have full confidence, but the thing is that in a lot of fighters, they'll say that they won't believe it because people are usually. Us people as a human race, we're usually good at identifying bullshit.
Yeah.
If you're not about it, dude, if you're not about that life, bro.
Man, some people are. Some people talk a lot of things and they don't really mean what they say.
That's what I mean.
One dude that inspires me is Ilya Taporia.
Yeah.
That dude means everything he says.
Dude.
When he was doing that interview, he was like, I'm gonna submit Islam with the darts because that's his favorite choke.
Yeah.
110% of me believes him.
Yeah.
That's a dude you're like, no, that dude means what he says.
Yeah, dude. And he just, I think over time, right? Obviously, with his confidence, it's going to be taken as cockiness to some fans.
Yeah.
But his aura is just like, I agree with you, bro. I believe him.
Yeah.
I've seen his interviews from Valuetainment and all the popular podcasts. Like he's just going on tour, right?
Yeah.
On Joe Rogan and stuff like that. And when you see him and then you see his swagger, not just the way he speaks, and obviously he backs it up.
Yeah.
Like he was a champ and now he's moving up.
Yeah.
But then, listen, the way you dress, the cars that you drive. I used to be that guy, right? I used to be that guy, and I'm not fucking rich. Don't get me wrong. I used to be that guy that would like hoard my money and stuff. I'd be like, okay, save it for a rainy day, which you have to. I'm not telling people, I'm not telling you guys not to save your money just in case. But listen, man, we're not our circumstances. You really have to feel your future self.
Yeah.
So this is an example, okay? This is kind of getting personal, but whatever, I don't care. I had a Toyota CHR, okay? It was a 2018, paid off, right? Mm-hmm. Most people would, some people don't even have cars, and I'm very blessed, but I'm thinking, listen, man, I want to buy a Tesla. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because Teslas are now like the standard. You know what I mean? You see them everywhere and they look cool and they're electric. My car was paid off and I didn't have to buy a fucking Tesla.
Yeah.
And I bought the ones with like the suicide doors, like the Batman wing doors and stuff like that, the X model.
Yeah.
Right?
Sick.
And I just saw it and I was like, fuck, that looks cool.
Yeah.
Usually my old self wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
It would have been like, man, I'm conservative. But this isn't to show off or show any status.
Yeah.
Even though I probably bought it for like an emotional state, like, something like status, but you are what your environment is,
100%.
right? If you're hanging out, it's no different than if you're hanging out with fucking great fighters, you're going to be one.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? That's why that Merab sparring thing intrigued me so much. I was like, Jesus Christ, he's just going with dogs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that's the same thing with your environment. Externally, arguably externally too.
Yeah.
If you go into a car, and I get it, man, like I'm not saying to buy a new car and stuff, do what you can, but for my mental state now, if I step into a car, it better be clean. It better be like with the car I want to drive because I'm immersing myself into being that, right? I write every day and I'm like, one of the things I'm going to fly business class everywhere I go, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the motive and stuff like that. And then you hear all these stories about like, I manifested 10 G's. Well, yeah, but that's with action.
Yeah. 100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's how like my belief system works 100%. Now.
100%.
Right?
No, that is so beautiful, man. And I think that's also too is your future self, which is like actual future self in the future, will look back when you have when you have more than what you need and be like, dang, I was this guy when I wasn't like a millionaire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that'll just make you even more proud of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then you'll know that like it really is like about your mental space and it really is about manifestation.
Dude, look at so we were talking before this podcast and about, you doing videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Look at like the progress now. That's why I wanted to have you on because the progress that I'm seeing, even when you started making content, here's why, is because just like fighting, 99.9999% won't fucking do it.
Yeah.
Because of they're scared to start. And I completely understand because we all started that way. I was scared to make content, man. I was scared to get judged by people, posting, getting one like, which happened.
Yeah,
in the beginning, it's
100%.
like, damn, my content sucks.
Yeah.
But just like getting punched in the face and not flinching, it's also a skill.
Yeah, 100%.
To be able to take that, right? It's kind of like 2 likes.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So what I want to get into now is that part of your life where you started creating content, which I love, because what I think about content nowadays, I used to be a fucking hater when it came to that. Why is she taking a video of herself? You know what I mean? And stuff like that. I used to be that guy.
Yeah, me too, actually. It's actually funny.
Like, come on. You know what I mean? It's like, get with the times. Yeah. But anyway, now that we're doing it, it's almost like you're reframing it. And not even a reframe, but it's true. By you not doing, check this thought out. By you not doing those like videos, how-to videos, even your like dancing videos, which fucking inspires, I'm like, dude, that's cool.
Yeah.
I love that shit because it's an expression of movement.
Yeah.
But like, even with that, talk about, or I'm sorry, my point is that if you didn't do that, you would be taking away from people because now they don't have something to watch someone that's like providing value in their own expression. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? It's kind of like, and even if we do the same thing, right? Say if we do kickboxing videos, it comes off different because it's you.
Yeah.
You're the only one that could provide you. You know what I mean? Even though we do the same kick, it'll come out different.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's coming out from you. So I guess where I was leading to is that, can you talk about how like you got over, I don't even know if you're fearful of starting, but why you started creating content?
Yeah, so it's actually funny. I was literally the same way as you.
Right.
I would see people on Instagram posting all this content. I'm like, man, just stop blowing up my feed.
Right.
Stop blowing up my feed, dog.
Yeah.
But then, like, really, I wouldn't say I was really that fearful.
Yeah.
I've always kind of just been kind of like, I've always kind of been just somebody who's kind of for the moment. So like, I would be like in theater projects and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm actually into like, I'm into acting a little bit, so I've been in like some short films and stuff. I've always been kind of a guy when the camera's on, like, you know, like I just go, you know what I mean? But I would say that like I just didn't really want to do it. The thing that really inspired me to do it was the idea of not trading my time for my money. So I want to make money while I'm not doing
anything. Yep.
So for me to do that, the best way for me to do that is to make money off of, you know, the skills that I have.
Yep.
And like a YouTube channel and like this and that. So it's really about financial freedom is really what got me over the hump to really start it and to really push it. But I would say that like, I definitely could feel that a little bit, like the whole, like, you know, views thing, you know what I mean? Like just getting one like, this one, that.
I mean, it's there for a reason.
Yeah, 100%. Like, but I think what helped me is just having so many, like being in Las Vegas and having such a great community around me. Like I have people from the gym who, you know, will like my content. Sure. I have people over here who I can do an interview with. Same with you.
Right.
I have, you know, friends back home, this, that. So I just am so blessed to have such like a wealthy and healthy and like beautiful community of people who support me. Having that really just made it a lot easier on me. But yeah, I would just say that what I did tell myself at the end of last year. I remember in October, this is hilarious. I made a video of myself. I was in the mirror. I was like, there is no way I will not be a millionaire by the end of 2025.
I like it.
I told myself that. Yeah. And I mean that fully.
Not for sure, for sure.
So if I don't become a millionaire, then it's whatever.
No, I love it. Yeah. All it comes down to is like immersing yourself. Okay, so what you're pretty much saying is that you're shooting for the stars, but you're gonna land on the moon. Yeah. Even though you don't get to $1 million, 100%. You're gonna be the type of person to be making money in general. Yeah, 100%. Right? Because that's your goal. Yeah. Well, what do you think's gonna happen when you start thinking these thoughts? It's kind of like, well, what's the process of being a millionaire? Yeah. That's where the real magic happens, not actually being a millionaire. Yeah. It's like, well, you'll probably reach like 500,000. Yeah, 100%. Would we say that's a bad thing? Because you didn't reach $1 million, right? You know what I mean? And why I started doing this, not completely why. I mean, you always want to like add value to people, you know, self-improvement really saved my life. But it's leverage. We live in a time now. I sound one of those like business coaches, but I'm not. But but we live in a time where leverage is so high, and that's what exactly you're talking about. Is that how you say like making money in your sleep, and you don't want to trade time for money. That's exactly what we're doing. We're creating leverage for ourselves because even though financially you're not making anything now off your videos, the thing is that with YouTube and Google and all the content that you create, it's going to compound over time.
Yeah, 100%.
Why? Because people are watching that content while you sleep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then they're going to be like, and now it goes into the Netflix model of like, oh, recommend another video from Nas.
Yeah.
And then when people fall asleep, and then it's going to recommend. It just helps the algorithm, right?
Yeah.
So the more videos that you make, obviously high value videos that you make, that you provide for people, that's what's really happening.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, who's this guy Nas? And then what happens with like brands and stuff like that, here's like the quote unquote trade secret, is that people start trusting you.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't really matter. Yeah. Keep putting out good content, but it almost doesn't matter what content you put out. You just got a slew of followers that are willing to, I don't know, buy your product or listen to your podcast. And I'm just telling people how it is, right?
Yeah.
They're like, wait, is that a tactic? No, it's not. I enjoy doing podcasts. It's like my life. I could do this forever without getting paid for it.
Yeah.
Because I just like having conversations, and then I'm learning from you, and then we're filtering back and forth. It builds a connection and all that stuff. But eventually that's the byproduct.
Yeah. I do want to say this too. For all you people watching, me and Chris, in like the next 5 to 10 years, we will be doing another podcast.
Oh yeah.
And it's gonna have at least 1 million views.
For sure.
That's a guarantee.
That's a guarantee.
Yeah. I called it here.
Yeah. There's this guy like Alex Hormozy. He said something along the lines of why I believe that. Why? Because most people aren't persistent. The consistency, discipline thing, and the persistence, it's kind of like this, okay? And this isn't a judgment to anyone. It's just an observation.
Yeah.
If you walk into like a workplace, right? And then you could go around and ask, or, see people that go to the gym. What do you think the percentage of that is? Like, say if there was 30 people, right? Like you're working with. How many people of those guys go to the gym? And I'm not just talking about fighting. I'm talking about like lifting. I'm talking about active stuff.
Like in a workspace?
Yeah. Just when you work into a workspace. And I guarantee you, this is the statistic for every workspace. Almost
20%.
Every workspace. It's lower, man. It's probably about like 5.
Yeah, and
what I mean? And again, that's not a judgment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a judgment. It's just facts. It's statistics. It's like, it's based from experience. You know what I mean?
One thing that, man, that's so crazy that you brought that up. I was actually thinking about that. Is one thing that I'm so grateful for. And, I do not consider myself to be, the best, the best fighter in the world at this point.
Yeah.
But I do consider myself to be the best fighter in the world in the future.
Yeah.
And I think that a testament to that is going to be my consistency in the past, and my consistency now, my consistency in the future. And this is why I'm always hard on people about showing up to the gym, because when I had my worst moments with my OCD, with my intrusive thoughts, some of the lowest moments of my life, I was showing up to the gym every single day.
Yes.
Same with you.
Yes.
I like, a lot of people make a lot of excuses, but when I was going through some of the darkest times someone can go through, I was showing up to the gym every single day, being consistent. And that will not stop when I'm having fun. That won't stop when I'm having a terrible time. That won't stop when I'm having a mid time. I will be, and that's if I'm,
or even a tragic time.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's not just with fighting. That's with content. That's with how I treat people. That's with everything in life. So consistency, obviously you can have moments where you just, like,
you feel like
I ain't training today.
Right.
I ain't training for a month.
Sure.
I got to do other stuff in life. But if you want something in life, you got to attack it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why you inspire me so much, because you would show up.
Yeah.
I'm sure you felt like shit.
Absolutely,
like so many days.
Bro. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But you would show it, and like that's just so inspiring.
Man, I really do appreciate that, because sometimes it's hard subjectively.
Yeah.
It's like looking at a mirror, right?
Yeah.
Like, again, I like to use the gym reference because it's just overall like, it's what kind of separates. What I mean is like, when someone goes to the gym, whatever it is, they're disciplined,
Yeah.
right? They built that habit, and kudos to them.
Yeah.
But sometimes I appreciate the feedback, because sometimes when we look at the mirror, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure this is you too, is that we have a hard time. We're our harshest critic.
Yeah.
We're like Kobe Bryant's, you
Yeah.
know, and Michael
Yeah.
Jordan mentality. Like
Yeah.
nothing's ever good enough.
Yeah.
Even if you have a good role at the gym, you're gonna get murked the next day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%,
It's kind of
yeah.
like, okay, but then are you gonna quit?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
that's it?
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is that, again, with that guy that I was telling you about, that, I don't know, call him a marketer, call him an influencer, whatever, Alex Ramosi, is that he was saying that you have to last long enough. If you play what's called game theory, you're playing a infinite game, which means regardless of what happens, you don't quit. So like in baseball or basketball, you reach the time limit, right? And then the person with the highest score wins. That's a finite game. That means it ends.
Yeah.
If you don't quit and you're able to outlast everyone, especially in your market, say we'll just talk about business,
Yeah.
who else are people going to turn to? And they see you going through hard times and stuff like that. What the fuck? Like, you're unbreakable at that point. When they see people quit and then get back into it,
Yeah.
they don't trust that shit.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, dude, this guy's a quitter.
Yeah. I remember I went on a losing streak in 2022. And I had so many moments I thought about quitting and giving up and fighting. But I never stopped going to the gym and fighting.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I would feel like quitting, I would feel like fighting, but I would never stop. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I'm very lucky to, and a big reason that I'm that way is people like my parents, my mom and my father. I'm so blessed and lucky to have two amazing parents in my life. Not everybody has that.
Yep.
My father, he's the hardest working man I've ever seen in my life. Always working, always putting people first.
Yep.
Always,
That's a great sense of
always
awareness.
making money, always putting on for his family and the people around him. Same thing with my mother, always taking care of us, always making sure we have everything we need.
Yeah.
So they're just a great example of that.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
You're like a product of
yeah,
that.
100%.
Yeah. This, at first, me and Coach Danny, right, from the gym,
Yeah.
our boxing coach from Syndicate, shout out. We joked around. This is the first time I ever asked this, right? When we were joking about it, we were like talking about trauma. And to be a fighter, and I was talking to John Wood about this too, you have to have some, I know everyone's playing nice at the gym and everyone's nice. Come on. A lot of people are nut jobs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and not in the best way possible. You know, like they're at the gym, they're doing good for themselves. But it's like, I almost want to ask, and I'll ask you this. I know it's overall a lot of things, especially with the OCD thing, but what do you think sticks out to you, the trauma in your childhood, not like with your parents or anything, but what happened to you in life that caused you to fight? Because there's that, you have to have that killer instinct, right, to fight. And you got to be a little bit of a nut job because not everyone does it.
1000%.
So I'll ask you that, and you could take time to think about it. Because everyone has
that is an amazing question.
Yeah. And everyone has an answer for it that they can justify, and that's the very best you can do. So give me your
That's
best
one of my favorite questions of all time, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. What causes you to hit people in the face and get hit back to the chance that you could go to the hospital?
Yeah. So my name Nasir, it's Arabic and it means protector.
Nice.
I have an older half brother, but out of my immediate family, I'm the oldest one, and ever since I was a kid, I've always been about protecting people. There's no way anybody in my family is gonna get hurt by anybody, and if that does happen, the person who does that is done for.
Yeah, like not on your watch, right?
Yeah. And that goes for my friends as well, and my family. There's no way somebody's going to be able to get away with hurting somebody,
right?
And have me not do something to them. I remember I was 4 years old. Well, I actually don't remember. My mom tells me this story, but I was 4 years old and I was at the park, and there were these group of like teenagers, and they're all like circling this one kid, and they're all bullying him. Like at 4 years old, I ran in the middle of the circle, and I was like, what's up? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like 4.
Right.
That was obviously like stupid. So sometimes doing things like that when you're not in a position to do that can hurt you.
But it was instinctual.
But that instinctual thing is always kicked off in me when somebody's in need, when somebody needs help. There's no question that I'm going to be right there. And I think most good men are the same way. That's just how men are. Obviously women as well. Like mothers are so protective of their children and everything.
Sure.
But when me, like, I will bring whatever violence needs to be brought to protect the people that I love.
I like that, man, because usually, the the trauma that people talk about
Yeah.
are more like, yeah, you know, I got like slapped when I was a kid or something like that. But I like it because it's more of a protective, positive life.
I'll also say too, like just, you know, just also being, you know, a little self-conscious kid.
Okay. Yeah.
Want, you know,
like a little bit insecure, a little bit. Okay.
Want to be cool.
Yeah, sure.
Want to do this, want to do that. That was also a huge reason. So I had plenty of moments in my life where I didn't think I was going to be a fighter.
Yeah.
I think I was born to be a fighter.
Sure.
I think that's my natural instinct. Also, you know, I'm from Rockford, Illinois, in Chicago. You know, my dad, you know, street dude from Chicago.
Yeah.
Pretty tough on me as a kid and the best dad ever. But like, you know, I don't know. I've always had a great balance of love and, you know, like love and like toughness in my life.
Yeah.
I feel like it's never, you know, I'm just, you know, so grateful for the way I was raised.
Yeah.
But I would just say certain moments in my life, I didn't really care about fighting, but at the same time, I have to be fully capable of protecting whoever needs to be protected. You know what I mean? And that always inspired me to train. And also protecting myself too.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful thing, and it's instinctual of us, especially when you actually train to fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what you're capable of.
Yeah.
But then it's kind of like what Jordan Peterson said. I'm probably going to butcher this quote, but it's like something along the lines of being like a harmless man isn't like a good thing. I'm paraphrasing now.
Yeah.
But then if you're capable and you have that under control, that makes you even more dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? Because I always like to bring this up because say if like you're walking to a Smith's or like a Walmart at night, it's not the fact that like, yeah, you could probably get stabbed at any time by a crazy person.
Yeah.
But then, dude, just the way you walk, the way you talk, if someone approaches you is enough for them to be like, oh, this guy, we talked about the aura thing with Ilya Taporia.
Yeah.
Like, say if I was some random stranger and then, you know, I was just arrogant of anything that's going on. And then I was like, hey, man, hey, Nas, or not Nas, but, you know, I didn't know you, but I was like, hey, man. And then you turn around and then you just had that like aura about you because you train and you're calm and stuff like that. And then you were just like, hey, what's up, man? Dude, they'll be like, oh, shit. Like, you know what I mean? You don't have to say a word.
Yeah.
It's the vibe that like, just like, yeah, I noticed it happened to me. Not that I'm a competitive
100%.
fighter, but then I'm confident within myself enough to
100%.
like kind of turn around and be like, what's up, man? At least even if it's another fighter, at least I have the option to be able to like hold my own, I guess. Even though if I get beat to a pulp by like John Jones, right? You know what I mean? You still have that mentality. That doesn't take away from your confidence that you're walking into like, you know, whatever, a Walmart.
Yeah.
And then, it's just instilled in you now.
Yeah.
It's the confidence that you have walking around because you know you're capable and competent.
You know, I think that like, you know, nowadays I like to consider myself a pretty level-headed dude. Nowadays I'm pretty rowdy because it's been tough to give me a fight. Everybody's declined to fight me. So I'm like, man, I'm going to fight somebody in the street, in the gym, like
trying to let it out.
Fight. So I don't know. Just been a little rowdy nowadays, but I like to consider myself level-headed, but like, you know, I'm a pretty small motherfucker. But I don't get above 155 usually. But there's not a man in the world I won't go toe to toe to death with. You know what I mean? If it comes to that,
that's what I'm talking about.
How big they are, how scary they are. Yeah. You know, I will. You know, I will get locked in a cell with any man, and I will not submit. I will not cower down. You know what I mean? You know, and I feel like there's a lot of men out there, even men who can't train, even men who can't fight. There's men out there like that. Yep. But at the same time, once you're able to train, once you're able to fight, you don't always need to provoke. So you don't always need to express that. It just expresses yourself. It expresses itself. Yeah. And sometimes that is a good thing because people won't fight you because they understand that you're somebody who's not going to back down.
Yeah, exactly, man. That's it. I think 80-90% of it is mentality. And when I say mentality, I'm not talking about fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Again, that's where competency comes in. Yeah. Because it has to be internal. Like you have to internalize it. And again, not fake it till you make it. Yeah. Because people, again, have good bullshit radars. And then if I see, it's easy to detect, honestly. Yeah. If you can see someone and then they're just like, you know, a little bit more fiery and then they act up and stuff like that, it's like, you're not about that life, man.
100%.
Sit down.
There's a lot of, it's so crazy nowadays. There's so many synchronicities going on and stuff. so many people talk and then so many people don't act. It's hilarious.
Fucking hell,
so many people
dude.
run away.
Yeah.
And it's, you know,
yeah.
it's
ahead,
always
go ahead.
been like that.
Yep.
But nowadays there's just so many instances where I'm like, man, you were talking a lot of shit and then you ran away.
Yeah, man. You know, so that's why I'm the proudest moment have had recently for myself, right?
Yeah.
Was writing. I switched up. I write newsletters and stuff like that. And trust me, I'll be writing one about you soon. It's how, like, say the Jerry one example, for example, I wrote a piece on him. The headline was "Walk It Like You Talk It."
Yeah.
Fuck, it was so powerful. When I was writing that, I was like, dude, this is like very well put together. And
Yeah.
even Jerry was, you know,
Yeah.
we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Bro, don't pay attention to what people say.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what they do.
Yeah.
Because the default in life is always no.
Yeah.
You got to, even when sales,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Even with likes on Instagram, the default, what pretty much people are telling you when they don't like it is like, nah,
Yeah.
nah, dog. But you have to act accordingly before you say something. So usually when people say, like, for example, oh yeah, you know, I'm like an honest guy, and then they keep repeating that, you're probably not that.
Yeah.
You probably just should act like that.
Yeah.
Because the people that act like that, they know that internally.
Yeah.
So they don't have to, and they know they show it by action. So they don't have to go around. So my example was with Jerry was like, this guy rolls with everyone. Like, it's just, you barely see him sitting out, right? Like, it's like, what the fuck?
Shout out
like,
to Coach Jerry, man.
dude, straight up. That's why I even told him, that's why I was like, that's why I talk a lot about him in the podcast, because in real life, it's one thing to watch YouTube videos and then see a motivational speaker and stuff like that. And then even though they do what they do, it's hard to like comprehend that in your head because you're seeing them from a screen. But then when you have someone in real life, like doing what he does and rolls with everyone and rolls with the best of them too, Merab and, you know, all that, every single round, it's hard not to like get inspired by that. It's like, damn, you walk it like you talk it.
Dude, that is, if that, you know, that is 100% like the perfect example. Coach Jerry, shout out to him.
Yeah, dude.
That man teaches 2 classes a day
It's crazy.
and he rolls every single round.
The kids'
And then
classes
there's-
too, he runs the
Yeah,
fucking
and the
program.
kids' classes too.
And then
he's
he
been
works
doing it
out
for
after
years,
that.
and then he works out, and then he's doing his Patreon.
Yeah.
That's I
It's
love that,
gnarly,
man.
dude.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He you know.
Yeah.
That is the definition of what a leader is and what an example is.
Yes.
There's no way you're gonna go to syndicate jujitsu and then just think that, you know, obviously there's not everybody has to go ham every single time. It's okay to take rest rounds and just like watch and stuff. But the way he leads the class, he's, you know, you're not gonna go there and just think that you're gonna be able to just be a dude who's been doing it for 6 months and then think that because you did 2 rounds, you deserve to just sit out.
Exactly.
Like if you injure yourself, fine.
Yeah.
If you really, like if you're really cardio tapped or whatever,
Right.
just keep rolling.
Sure.
You know
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I mean?
Right.
That's
right.
what Jerry's mentality is, and I love that.
It's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you notice, like, yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
But it's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And listen, I've been a victim of that too. I'm like, fuck, I'm tired.
Yeah, 100%.
But then, you know what I mean? He'll like make these small jabs at you. It's like, oh, you're sitting out. It's like,
No, I know. It was like, yeah, there's plenty of jiu-jitsu gyms. Syndicate is literally the only gym. Well, not the only gym I've trained at, but it's like the only gym that I've trained at consistently. Right. Well, I did do some martial arts as a kid. But like since moving to Las Vegas, it's been syndicate only. I'm sure there's plenty of jiu-jitsu gyms out there where the coaches are just sitting and watching. They teach the class and they sit down and then they watch.
That was a part of my article. I've been to those gyms.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been to those
and obviously,
gyms.
you know, I'm not a jiu-jitsu coach, so I can't say that like that's not something that a black belt deserves to do.
Yeah.
But like, you know, I am a coach. I don't spar when I watch people spar because I got to make sure people aren't killing each other. But
yeah,
that's another level of dedication to do what Jerry does.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, to be able to coach and then roll those rounds and then do something again and do something again. That's another level within itself, mentality wise and like physically wise too, which is like amazing to watch in real life is my point, you know? And what you were saying about like the black belt stuff, I guess, but then it's like, yeah, you earn those. You earn that black belt and whatever stripes you have.
Maybe.
Just,
yeah. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. Just saying.
I am far from a black belt, so I don't mean any disrespect.
Sure.
But yeah.
Yeah, but that's where I was leading to, though. It's kind of like some sort of sense of like entitlement, either that or you lost your passion for the sport.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen like gym owners completely just like sit there and maybe it's part of a business. Maybe it's part of running a over 600 student business, right? It may be taxing. You have to focus all your energy.
Yeah.
On
well, also
that.
too, you also have to like coach too. So you can't always be rolling. You got to like go around and coach and stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like, I'm sure there are like, I mean, I can just imagine there's a lot of places, not like in Las Vegas necessarily, but like a lot of places around the world where it's like the dude might be a black belt, but he doesn't run a black belt program. You know what I mean?
Right. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. The level of training.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much what you're saying, man. So, man, hey, throughout your development, what would you say before, we end it? We're just reaching over the hour, but what would you say to people that are going through like your spiritual journey? What tips would you have for that particular instance, like the spiritual part of it? Because like we talked about the theme of this podcast, a lot of people don't believe it, and we're not forcing anyone to, do this or that, you know what I mean? But what tips would you say for like, say if someone really wanted to get a feel of themselves for the other side? Yeah.
So what I would say is, first off, it does not matter if you believe in God. It doesn't matter if you're religious. That doesn't matter. What does matter is that we are in a world where there is logic and there is a mechanism and there is a certain way that things work. And somebody's mind and somebody's consciousness works a certain way. Nobody can convince me, and it doesn't matter if you believe in God or not, or if you're religious or not. You cannot tell me that you are a thought pattern. You are not that. You are the thing that's observing the thought pattern. So when you start with that, then you're starting your journey of mastering your mind and how you can manifest whatever you want in life.
Right.
That is just, it's like there's certain things that are just undeniable in life. This is a water bottle and it weighs a certain amount. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing when it comes to consciousness. There's a certain way that things work. I'm alive. I'm not dead. But what is being alive? You know what I mean? It's like being conscious. It's experiencing things.
Right.
You cannot deny that.
You're like reverse engineering a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
And putting it into its most simplest form.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I get what you're saying, because I've thought about it a lot. It's kind of like emotions. Emotions are just emotions.
Yeah.
If you can, like you said, look at it from an outside perspective, it ebbs and flows like anything else.
Yeah.
So if you're angry, go ahead, feel it, right? You're human. You have the right to do it. And sometimes we act on it. But the thing is just let it flow out and kind of put yourself in like a bird's eye point of view and watch yourself almost.
100%.
And I know sometimes that's hard to do. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. And so my thing is too, is like when it comes to spirituality, bro, it's not about believing in God. It's not about being like, Jesus, this prophet, that prophet, God, I'm right, you're wrong. It's about bettering your life. So when you know how to like practice things like acceptance, like just like acceptance is a thing in like Zen spirituality and like non-duality and things like that. Like that is like, it's about bettering your life. It's not about like being right about something. Yeah. So when you can accept your circumstances, and obviously you don't want to accept a bad circumstance and then complain about it. You don't want to be like, oh, everything sucks and I'm not going to do anything about it. But what you do want to accept is that maybe when I drive from here, maybe my car will get a flat tire out of nowhere. And there's no way I could have known that. Or maybe I'll get into a car crash and it'll be terrible and I'll die. You know what I mean? There's no way that I can know that. Don't be so attached to outcomes.
Right. Yeah.
Work your ass off. Have a goal that you fight your ass off for, but also know that you're not a failure if you don't achieve that. You're just living life.
Yes. Beautifully said. I think, to condense that, do the best you can and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, 100%.
What you're technically doing is that you reap what you sow, and the more that you sow, the more that you reap, right? And just leave it at that. You could think of what you want in the future and stuff like that, but like you said, don't expect an outcome. But I guarantee you, if you keep sowing and keep planting seeds, blossoms will grow. Your flowers will blossom some way or another. We don't know how it's going to get there. Usually like you want like a direct path. It doesn't happen that way. Usually you'll kind of dip and turn and then you'll get what you want. Or I'm sorry, usually you won't get what you want. You'll get what you need.
Right. Life is like this.
Yeah, the dip. Yep, exactly.
Life is
Yep.
like this.
Val-
There can't be too
yep.
much. There can't be too much up. There can't be too much down.
Yeah.
Obviously, people want more up than down.
Sure.
Sometimes life is like this.
Brother, whatever comes up must come down.
Yep.
And whatever comes down must come up.
Yeah.
What happens after winter? Spring. What happens after spring? Winter.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Everything's just an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
If you can, that's why it's cliche to say, like, you know, nowadays it's all about the progress. It is.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that are in my gym is that one of the quotes I really like is you're never arrived, you're always becoming. You never are.
100%.
You're always keeping up with the Joneses. You get that new car, you get that big house, you're gonna want more. You
Yeah.
get $1 million, you're gonna want 10.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I
exactly.
mean? Yeah.
Exactly.
So any last words, man, before we end this?
No, I did have to say, I don't think I talked about this.
Hey,
but
do what you
the
gotta do.
upgrade
Yeah.
from before
Yeah.
to now, the professionalism, like it was already like you were already like professional off the bat. But obviously you had like the iPhones and stuff.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
but the professionalism, and it's only been like a year,
Yeah.
dude.
Dude, I appreciate that.
Congratulations,
Dude, thank
bro.
you so much,
Thank
man.
you for having me on.
And it means a lot to me when, you know, when people come up here, because it's not just like the video quality. If you notice, like in the studio, I want people to have a good experience. It's not just for people's like viewing pleasure.
Yeah.
But then when guests like you come here, it means a lot to me. Because why? Because time is everything.
Yeah.
It's an unrenewable resource. So what I was talking about with Nick last time was that you could be like what that Jay-Z quote said, you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. You could be,
100%.
even if you were like playing video games.
Yeah.
Well, you'd enjoy playing that video game.
Yeah, exactly.
That means you're not here.
100%.
Right. So it's opportunity cost. And yeah, whenever people come here, I want them to have a good experience. Hence, you know, I'll offer like energy drinks. That's part
Yeah,
of it. It's
yeah,
kind of like when you
100%.
walk in, you want to see like, you want to be a part of something special.
Yeah.
Right. Not just like a recorder here and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden.
No,
you
dude,
know
when I
what mean?
walked in, bro,
Yeah.
like you got the Kanye tweet, got
You're
the art,
right.
the sick art, got
Yeah.
everything going, bro. It's
Yeah.
just like a complete, like,
Yeah.
you know, it's super sick.
I appreciate that, man. Dude, me and Nas are gonna make some, you know, on our other ventures, some kickboxing content after this.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
watch out for
I
that.
was thinking that. I was thinking also money too.
Exactly.
Because I don't know. Everybody who watches this, you guys are gonna like 5 years from now, you'll be like, oh shit, they weren't lying. They really. There's gonna be a podcast. It's gonna have like.
Oh, that's for sure.
I'm guessing. You know what? Here's my guess.
Oh.
This is a random guess. I'm guessing our podcast with like once you post it like a month later, it'll
Yep.
have like a 1.7 million views or something like that.
Yeah, you
that
already
sounds
know,
pretty cocky,
man.
but like
You
I don't know.
already
I just
know.
believe that.
Well, the thing is, like we said in the YouTube algorithms, is like that. It's evergreen. It's evergreen, which means the more episodes that I put out, value episodes,
Yeah.
the more that people are going to watch it, and then it trickles up from there. So the past episode, like this one,
Yeah.
it's just going to get more views and views. And then the one before this one that I did, it's going to get more views and views.
Yeah.
Just because that, like, stuff like this, like, you're literally giving people advice of what you went through.
Yeah.
That's valuable fucking life advice. That's why I do this podcast in the first place. It saves lives,
Dude,
literally.
And that means so much to me. I didn't know that. But I'm glad you brought that up because that's my passion.
Yeah.
Is like I'm 22 and I have so much to learn. Like
Learned a lot too.
I have so much to learn, but I also feel like for a 22-year-old, I have learned a lot of
Yeah.
things. I've had a lot of experiences in life.
Mm-hmm.
So like I love to learn from everybody.
Yeah.
I learn from the kids that I teach.
Sure.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But like I just want people to better their lives.
Yeah,
And I feel like
absolutely.
if I can help them with that, then like I'm gonna go as hard as I can to make sure that happens.
That just means you won't have any regrets in life.
Yeah.
And it was a good life lived.
100%.
Right? Perfect, man.
Let's go.